Hello, I'm Roger Armstrong, and I'm a psychic child that was born in 1930. Now, in 1933, the Great Depression was still going on. And my mom was away from home a lot because she was out making money in bridge tournaments. She was an excellent bridge player, and so she was making money for our rent and for our food. My dad's laundry business was marginal at that time, and he was trying to keep all his workers in salary having money. Now, being alone when you're 3 wasn't too bad for me because I had friends that came and visited. Now, my friends were adults, and they would just appear to play with me. And we would play games like touch your leg and move that muscle without moving your leg. They would play games with me like stand on your leg like a bird and have your eye move around the shadow. They would play games with me like picture your truck moving across the room away from you. Now picture it coming towards you. And we would do that all afternoon. Now, my mom heard those stories, and they were concerned about leaving me home alone anyway. So they decided to send me out to my grandpa's farm and be with my grandpa. Now, my grandpa was an old country farmer from Finland. And so he was aware of the old myths and stories. So when I came out, we talked about everything, and he treated me as if I was an adult, and he would ask me questions. How do we do this? How do we do that? And we would work through the whole problem and problem solving. He said a lot of Finns had problems with their temper, because after all, we were Vikings, and we're from Viking blood, and it's Vikings that go berserk in battle. But they did learn, when they weren't in battle, to control their anger. So we talked about and practiced ways how to contain my anger and to release it, but not release it towards people. We also followed through with the games that my friends taught me. And one of the games that Grandpa had me do was to roll a ball on the path to the barn, and I would keep the ball rolling just with the power of my mind. And I could run all over the yard pushing the ball ahead of me without touching it. These were the kinds of things that we did. He also showed me, or taught me, how to lift things. And since I was little, and a lot of the things I had to lift were big, he said if I pictured them in my mind, if I saw a picture of them as being lighter, I would be able to lift them. And we talked about you have to be careful not to take all the weight off. Like if you're scooping manure in the barn, you certainly don't want the manure floating around. And we laughed and laughed and laughed about those kinds of stories. So everything you picked up needed to have weight, but it should be light enough that you could handle it easily. Later on, when I was older and we would go to the feed mill, and I was 10 years old, and I would move 100-pound grains of sacks of grain, rather. And then the millmen would go to pick it up, and they would be astonished that it was a 100-pound sack of grain. And they would say to my grandpa, "Oh, your grandson is so strong." And he would laugh, and he said, "Yes, he's a Viking turned farmer." Now, there were times that Grandpa had things to do and didn't want me underfoot. So he would have me go to the spring near his woods. He had 300 acres. Near his woods, And out of the hill, coming from several boulders, was a fresh, sweetwater spring. And it had a basin of rocks, and in the basin, the surface was covered with watercress. Now, behind the hill, there was a fairy ring. Now, a fairy ring is a ring with mushrooms around the edges, clear inside the ring, except for several mounds of moss. And the moss grows on top of each other, so it's like a stool. And there's always a tall one and several shorter ones. And in the old myths, in many cultures, that's the place where the little people are. Now, I would go there and picture animals coming to teach me. And they would. And on the edge would be a fox, be mice, rabbits, squirrels. And they each in their turn would tell me things in pictures. And I would tell them my stories in pictures also. The one they liked the best was the time that I reached down to pick watercress and fell in the pond head over heels. They just laughed and laughed and laughed at that. Now, when it was time to go home, I could hear Winnie the cow, because she had a bell on her, and she would come up to the pond. So I'd get my watercress. When her head was down, I grabbed a hold of her horns, or one horn, make myself lighter, and when she lifted up her head, I would swing on her back. And then we would go to the barn, her cowbell dinging, and 65 other cows following us. Several times I saw the fox watching. Those were the types of things that Grandpa had me do. And those were the experiences that I had as this psychic child. Now later on, I could do more things. But as it was, when we milked, I could feed all the cows because he liked to feed them as they were being milked. I could talk to the cows with pictures, and we found out that when I talked with them, they gave more milk. So Grandpa encouraged me to walk around and picture to the cows. Those were good times. Those were good times. And I learned with my grandpa how to control my anger. And we set forth a whole series of rules that if you have special abilities like I had, and if they were developed like they should be, you needed to control them and to hide them, because most people just didn't understand. And that's why it was important to have things have weight. Yeah, my grandpa and I had all kinds of secrets. He was a marvelous man. Well, I hope you enjoyed my story. And I have many more that will be on my website. And that's wasapsychicchild.com. Now, the whole purpose of this is I'm interested in meeting other Was a Psychic Child people. I gave a talk at the Metaphysical Library in Ashland, Oregon, and I met 3. And in my whole life of 77 years before that, I only met 1. So we're out there. And I think it's a good time in the culture that we're all living in now that we tell our stories and we help the new young psychic children that are developing. So write your story. It's bound to be a good one.